Milwaukee Brewers in 2023 finished with a record of 92 and 70, winning the National League Central Division. However, they ended up losing in the Wild Card Series, getting swept by the eventual National League pennant winners, the Arizona Diamondbacks. Heading into 2024, there have been some pretty big changes in Milwaukee regarding the manager and the team on the field. It's a very interesting scenario, I would say, for this Brewers team. Who knows what to expect of them? We're going to try and break that down right now. So let's not waste any more time. My name is Derek. I'm here with Luke. You're watching Bleacher, Brawls, and this is your Milwaukee Brewers 2024 team profile. First things first, I'll hand it over to Luke, get some of his opening thoughts. As I said, there are some changes with this team on and off the field. So let's get your opening thoughts. Kind of what are your thoughts for this team as we enter the 2024 season?
Well, some new young faces on offense and clearly a transitional year on the pitching side of things and a new manager. So a lot of changes in Milwaukee. And I would say a repeat as division champs is next to impossible for this Brewers team.
Yeah, like I've said this before, and I think a couple of the other NL Central teams that we've covered, but I think this is probably the most unpredictable division in baseball. And I think the Brewers, there's clear that there's not as much talent on their roster in some senses. But when we talk about this roster, let's talk about some of the key players that they have. So I'll go back to Luke. Who are three key players for this Brewers team? And out of those three, who's one that you would like to expand on?
Well, I'll start with Freddie Peralta, the new ace. I won't go in depth on Freddie Peralta, but he's the new ace with Burns and Woodruff gone, for better or worse. He looks, I know they like him in Milwaukee, and he's a talented pitcher. Also, William Contreras, he was one of only two Brewers regulars last season with a batting average over 234. You look at the batting averages of this team, 1 through 9 with the regulars, it is god awful. And Christian Yelich, the other guy with the batting average over 234 in this lineup. Yelich finally looked like a good player again last year for the first time since 2019, really. Kind of the last time Chris Sale looked like a good player for a whole season anyway. He's the only star that's left on this team, unless you want to count Devin Williams, who's only a closer, but he's the only recognizable name and face on this team that's left. He's watched the team that he had a title shot with torn down in front of his eyes, so his leadership's really going to be needed during this transition. I'd be interested in being a fly on the wall, seeing what he thinks about that, the state of the team, the state of his career with that team, and really what were his chances at taking home a ring, which seem like they're totally gone by now. And he's there until 2029 with an untradeable contract, unless he really picks it up again at age 31. Last year may have been the beginning of an individual resurgence for Yelich, but the team resurgence, in my opinion, is not coming anytime soon.
I did like the 29 stolen bases for Yelich last year. I thought that was nice to see him running a little bit more, add a little bit more value as well in the base running aspect of the game. So I think he's key for them, like you said, so I'll use him as one. He kind of took my guy, so I'll kind of go a little bit outside of the box with my second guy. And I'll talk about Sal Frelick because I think Boston College guy, first-round pick in 2021 by the Brewers. Last year, only 223 plate appearances. Wasn't amazing, but he's slated to be a big part of this Brewers team, not just now, but in the future. I think he's important. But I do want to touch on Freddie Peralta. You did bring him up slightly, but this is a guy in Freddie Peralta who was part of that massive three-headed monster for the Brewers. When you talk about Burns, Woodruff, and Peralta, Peralta was always kind of the forgotten guy of that three-headed monster. In 2021, he put up a 4.4 season with a 2.81 ERA over 144 innings. The last 2 years, a little bit rougher. 78 innings in 2022, a 3.58 ERA. Last year, he put up a 3.86 ERA, 3.85 FIP, 3.45 Sierra. It was a 3-4 season, pitched 165 and 2/3 innings, made 30 starts. I think he's solid. Is he a 1? That's definitely debatable. But he is the Brewers' number 1. He's the best pitcher that they have in terms of starting pitching. And I think that this Brewers team is going to be successful. I think they are going to need him to stay healthy and have a very good year and make 25 to 30 starts for them. So I think he's very key for this team.
Who was the first guy you mentioned? The BC guy?
Sal Frelick.
Oh, okay. I didn't hear his name when you were saying it.
Yeah. He should be. He'll probably play right field, I think, for them next year. Likely left field. Not because Yelich will be in left field, so he'll likely be in right field. Let's move on to some of their key offseason moves. They signed Rhys Hoskins, Jacob Junis. They traded Corbin Burns, obviously, for DL Hall and Joey Ortiz. They non-tendered Brandon Woodruff due to injury. That doesn't really mean anything because it was his last year of under team control, and he was going to miss the season anyways. He would have just racked up that year on the injured list and would have been a free agent anyways after next year, so that doesn't really change anything, but it still happened. Out of those moves, is there any move that I didn't list? I'll hand it back over to you, Luke. What's kind of like the big move for this offseason for the Brewers?
I'm going off that list, and I'm going with the guy that Brewers fans have been excited about for probably a year or two now, and that's Jackson Chourio, the number one prospect in the Brewers system, the 20-year-old Venezuelan. He just signed this offseason. He signed an 8-year, $82 million deal, technically last year because it was in December. But the Brewers love him. Clearly, he hasn't played at the major league level. He's 20 years old, but they committed $82 million to him. He's an aggressive hitter with great speed and power to all fields that can actually play every outfield position. A potential 30-30 talent from this guy. He's their next big thing. And they clearly showed that by committing to him for 8 years before he's made his major league debut. He's not guaranteed an opening day roster spot, but the way I see it, the Brewers are going nowhere this year. So why not just throw him into the fire now, let him get his feet wet in what's kind of as far as major league competition, it's kind of a throwaway year for the Brewers, at least in my opinion. And let's see what this guy has now. But he should be a really exciting player, five-tool kind of player. So he's going to be exciting. He's going to be the most exciting thing going on in Milwaukee this baseball season.
Yeah, 20 years old, actually. This video is coming out March 16th, so 5 days after Jackson Chourio's birthday. Still 19 as of recording. So happy late birthday to Jackson Chourio from me in the future. He will be 20 by the time this comes out, like I said. He is obviously super important. I do want to talk about the Corbin Burns trade, though. This is a trade where a lot of people look at it and go, Brewers are kind of, throwing the year away a little bit. I like the return they got, honestly. When you look at DL Hall, I like that they're going... I think they're going to give him the chance to start, and I like that. If they are truly high on him, which it seems like they are, and they think he can start, I like going out and being aggressive with him and giving him the chance to start, because he was just going to be a reliever for the Orioles. If the Brewers believe he can start, that could be a nice little snag for them, especially value-wise, considering the Orioles had him viewed as a reliever, and they kind of have him as a starter heading into the season. So I think that's going to be extremely interesting to see how that plays out. And then the other thing, too, is Joey Ortiz, who they got. There's been rumors that he could probably start the season on the big league roster. Some people have been saying third base. Other people say he very well could be their shortstop if they end up trading Willy Adames, which there are some people that have also said in the know that have said maybe this opens the pathway to a Willy Adames trade because he could play shortstop. We'll see. But I think the Brewers actually did well. They also got a comp pick, competitive balance pick, I'm pretty sure it was, as well in that trade. I think it was the 34th overall pick. You can only trade competitive balance picks. You can't trade regular draft picks, but the competitive balance round picks you can trade. So the Brewers also got that pick in the 2024 MLB draft as well. So I think the Brewers did well. And considering it's the Brewers, I doubt they were going to bring back Corbin Burns and extend him for what he would command in free agency. So I think overall, considering just the 1 year control, I think the Brewers did very well for themselves in this trade. Obviously, when you trade the best player in a trade, it doesn't a lot of time, especially when you talk about casual fans in terms of the people who just kind of know names. They might go, oh, well, who's the guys they're trading for? They're nobodies. Why'd we trade away this guy? But I think when you start digging deep into this, I think it makes sense because, like I said, I don't think the Brewers were going to be able to keep Corbin Burnes past this year because I think he was going to hit free agency and get paid. So I think overall, I think the Brewers did very well with the return.
Well, and they poisoned the relationship with him arguing over nickels and dimes during arbitration anyway. So, and they couldn't afford him, so they weren't going to re-sign him anyway. But saying you like this trade is kind of like saying you like the return on the Mookie Betts trade because Jeter Downs is a really highly rated prospect. Verdugo shows he had some talent, and everybody needs a catcher. So I mean, that's a pretty good return for Mookie Betts.
I think it's different though because the Brewers aren't. We know they weren't going to bring back Corbin Burnes. They weren't going to be able to afford him. The Red Sox could have afforded Mookie Betts if they wanted to. That's the difference.
No, that's a whole nother video. That's
but what I mean is
marathon video. That's a podcast episode discussion.
But what I'm saying though is it's clear they weren't going to bring him back. So considering the fact that they didn't have the leverage, whoever was trading for him had leverage because it was clear the Brewers were looking to move him because they couldn't keep him past this year. I think they did well for themselves in the return. Obviously, it's not Corbin Burnes. They're not getting a Corbin Burnes-esque player back, but like I said, I think they did well. I think they could have done a lot worse in a return. So that's what I mean more so by that. Last but not least, we'll talk about expectations for this team. You've gotten into them a little bit, Luke. So what are the expectations for this team heading into 2024?
I think they're building for the future, and their expectations for this year are I think they're going to be fighting with the Cardinals to stay out of the basement in a relatively bad division, the NL Central. So I don't think they have many expectations. They're not thinking about that. The Brewers aren't thinking about what they can do this year. They're thinking about what they can do in 2025, 2026.
I think the internal expectation is still going to be to push for a division title because, let's be honest, it's still like the weakest division in the National League, and arguably probably not weaker than the AL Central, but it's the second weakest division then in baseball. I think their internal expectation is to still compete for the division. But I think overall they also are going to be looking to kind of transition into this young core of position players, such as Jackson Chourio, Sal Frelick, Bryce Terang, et cetera, et cetera. I could go on and on because there's a lot of them. But I think those are the guys that are going to be looking kind of transition into a little bit, like I said, a Willy Adames trade could make sense very well. So I think that's going to kind of be their expectation for 2024. And I think that's a good place to wrap this thing up on. Brewers fans, let us know your thoughts in the comments. Make sure to check out all our other team profiles that we've been posting and will be posting as the days go on in this 40 videos in 40 days series. For Luke, my name is Derek. Thanks for tuning in to Bleacher Brawls, and we will see you next time.